Hello, and welcome to the Flix Forum podcast, where each episode we go back and we look at a Netflix original film in the order of release. This episode, we have Netflix 155th film. It's a 2019 sci-fi, See You Yesterday. This is directed by Stefon Bristol. It stars Eden Duncan-Smith, Dante Crichlow, and Astro. I am Jesse, and I'm here with MJ. How are you?
I'm good, Jesse. I'm good. How are you?
Yes, love and life. Life is good. I'm alive, and that's all that matters at the moment. So,
True.
and I get to
take the
talk to
little
you.
wins.
Yeah, I get to talk to you. So that's always a highlight of my week.
This is the highlight of the week.
And especially a sci-fi film for me too. One of the ones that I kind of look forward to when I see them coming up. So it's something good.
We don't have too many sci-fi films on the old Flix Forum list. So, and to be honest, the ones that we have had in the last, we had a few early, we had a few in the middle. They've all been pretty good. Netflix has done all right with their sci-fi films. So this was interesting to get into.
Good. Well, let's get into it and kick off with our fast flicks, where you give us a quick summary of your thoughts on the film.
Yeah, so See You Yesterday is a movie about a couple of genius high schoolers from Crown Heights in Brooklyn figure out a way to go back in time and discover how fickle the decisions we make can be.
I love that. That's really nice. I've said very similar thing, but I haven't said it as nicely. So what did you say? I just said, I think you said, what did you call them? Genius. What did you say? They were geniuses or something?
Genius high schoolers.
Genius high schoolers. I've called them switched on.
Geez. They're a bit more than switched on.
I've just said two switched on African-American teens experiment with time travel, challenged by needing to use it for more than just fun.
I have always thought of myself as a pretty switched on kind of guy, and I'm not very close to discovering time travel, I'll be honest.
Yeah, true. I was trying to think of a word that related to them pressing buttons on their switched on.
Okay.
I was trying to.
Okay.
Anyway, that was when I was writing it. I had that word switched on straight away, and I was like, "Oh, how can I use this?" But yeah, yours is better. Well done. We do like to have a look at how this has been put together. So what do you have for us on this one?
Yeah, all right. So first things first, our director, Stefon Bristol. So he grew up in Coney Island. He's of Guyanese descent. Made a note that he never really saw Caribbean people represented in film, which is pretty fair, to be perfectly honest. So for his master's thesis at NYU Film School, he co-wrote with a fellow NYU student, Frederica Bailey, and he directed See You Yesterday, which at this stage was the short film. And it was obviously based in New York City, and it was, as he would have wanted, centered around these Guyanese characters. So Spike Lee, who had been a lecturer for Stefon Bristol in his university days, or his college days, he saw this work and he decided basically to fund this as a short film. And in the short of it is later when he saw the final product of the short film, he decided to give him another grant to sort of fix it up, clean it up, get it all ready to go. And that short film that was made was entered into a bunch of festivals. It won accolades as a finalist of the HBO short film competition for the American Black Film Festival. It won the Best of the Festival in the Hip Hop Film Festival and also HBO Short Film Competition. So, as I said, Bristol had attended some lectures and classes of Spike Lee's, and during his time, he tried a bunch of times to get an internship with him. He finally got one where there's basically unpaid work for 7 days a week, which that's the way it is in the industry. If you want to have an internship, that's how you got to do it. So. Yep. But the point is, he developed this relationship with Spike Lee as a student, and obviously as a man who wants to get into the film industry. So apparently, the plan was always to make See You Yesterday as a feature film when he was actually at NYU, and he got advice that he wasn't ready to make a feature, and he should release it as a short, which could work as a proof of concept. So one day, basically, Spike Lee emailed him, asking if he wanted him to be a producer for a full-length film. So it all sort of come around full circle. It's all done well. And at this time, Spike Lee was shooting BlacKkKlansman, and Bristol was actually working as his assistant on the set. So when they wrapped that film, and then about a year had passed, after he had agreed to produce. They got a deal with Netflix to shoot the following year. So the Netflix executives basically hadn't responded to Stefon Bristol about producing the film. So Spike Lee went to the Netflix CEO and basically asked him if he'd make the film, and he said, "Yep, sounds good." They had received offers from other production companies, but they wanted too many changes. And from what I can gather, the notes and the changes that Netflix wanted were basically more related to the scale of the film. So I'm assuming the budget wasn't enormous for this, but again, the Spike Lee name, obviously a massive part of this film getting made, and Stefon Bristol, with his story that meant so much to him, finally gets it made, and Netflix comes to the party to get it done. It's a good story in the end, and obviously the film itself released on Netflix in 2019.
Amazing. That was really well put together. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to you tell the story because, it's a really nice story. It's one of those ones that you look at and you go, this is a guy who's sort of done a lot of the hard yards to prove what he wants to do in life, and obviously getting on board and having Spike Lee with him has definitely helped him in that. So it goes back to that old saying, isn't it, that it's about who you know, not what you do or whatever it is. That's not what it is, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no. But obviously the idea as well, and taking nothing away from Stefon Bristol, as you alluded to, like he worked his ass off to get there. He had his vision, he had his dream of getting this particular film made. And nothing really stopped him from doing it. Every little step that he took was probably to get this film made and to launch a career. But the Spike Lee thing was obviously beneficial, but not without him putting in the hard yards to gain Spike Lee's trust and even mentorship. So, you're right. It's a great story.
And I think looking at I'm pretty sure that the majority of the main cast were the same people that played the same characters in the short film too. So that's another nice thing that he's kept those people on board. Obviously, if they've built that connection with those characters, to play them again is a good thing for them too. You've done such a good job. I've only got little bits and pieces, and I guess I'll pop a spoiler alert in here now. A couple of little facts and things that I've got are probably going to ruin the film. It's not so much, but the ending does have a bit of a open for interpretation ending. And Bristol, the director, he's specifically come out and said, I'm not going to make a sequel. He wanted the ending to be open for interpretation and for viewers to come up with their own conclusion. And he said, this is a direct quote. He said, I didn't want the film to be wrapped up in a bow. I didn't give a clear answer about what happened or let you know if something happened or not. So it's a nice little thing that he's got a clear vision and said, no, I want you to work this out yourself and go for it from there. So a nice little tie into.
Did you give your spoiler alert then and then just avoid saying a spoiler because you get too scared?
I know. I was like, I'm going to regulate myself a bit and go, nah, I'm not going to do it.
You always do this.
Yeah, I know.
Guys, this is a real spoiler. If you haven't seen this movie, we're going to spoil it. Jesse's done really well not to spoil it so far. But we're going to spoil it at some point. So if you want to watch See You Yesterday, watch it, come back and listen to us. Otherwise, there will be spoilers from now on.
I have written in my notes what actually happened. I was like, I'm going to pause and not say
it.
Oh, God. I just feel bad. I'm one of those people that, like, if someone spoils a film, I feel horrible about it. Yeah, it's and I'm sure you're exactly the same. Like, it's a tricky one.
I know, and then we got to be explicit. We will spoil it, and if we haven't already, which we haven't, but we will.
True.
Be ready.
All right, let's go. Let's keep moving. So, the tagline. I found the tagline for this one again, because I know we had a bit of a laugh the last few weeks. So this one is called the tagline is "Going back is the only way forward," which isn't too bad. Once you've watched the film,
I like it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I like it. I'm a tagline man, and I like that one.
That's a goodie. In other countries around the world, this one in France was called Like It Was Yesterday. So still uses that word yesterday. In Turkey, it was called Saving Yesterday. Taiwan, it was called Turn Around. And all I could get in my head was that song, that Turn Around. Anyway, that was it. So the other thing too, and this is a spoiler too, Michael J. Fox is in this film, and this is his last role since he's retired. So there you go. I did spoil something. like you mentioned, it hit Netflix in the 17th of May 2019. It did play at the Tribeca Film Festival at the start of May, and had a couple of nominations at that festival. including the runner-up for Best Narrative, and it was also nominated for the Best First Feature, but it did actually win 2 other awards at other places too. So it won the Best Non-Theatrical Release at the Online Film Critics Society Awards, and it also won for the Best Screenplay at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. So
Wow.
couple of little noms there as well.
They're big awards.
Yeah. What's the consensus for this one? What are the critics and the audience are saying?
It's a 5.2 out of 10 on IMDb of 10,000 ratings, and it's a 2.9 out of 5 on Letterboxd. Again, nearly 10,000 ratings. Probably a bit lower than I would have expected. I thought there'd be a bit more love for this film. Not bad scores, but I thought, I did think they would be a little bit higher.
Yeah, I guess if we go to Rotten Tomatoes, where the audience sort of agreed, they had it at 40%, and that was on over more than 250 reviews from an audience on Rotten Tomatoes. So that's quite a few people realistically when we look at those numbers. But then we go to the critics, and the critics had this at 95%. So
there you go.
Certified fresh. We haven't had a certified fresh film in a while. That's on 40 reviews, but 95%. So quite a big difference between the critics and the audiences for this one.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, that sort of 5 out of 10, 3 out of 5 kind of mark is pretty consistent across the board. So interesting.
All right, well, let's head into our early thoughts on this one. What did you think?
I thought it was pretty cool. Time travel kind of fascinates me. I mean, will it never happen because we've never seen anyone come back, or are there like these really strict rules about time travel in the future about what you can and can't do? And I don't know. It always fascinates me, and I think it's a great device to tell a story. So, I mean, in its essence, this concept has been done before. The idea of traveling back in time and recognizing that the slightest changes can have the biggest impacts. It does have this fresh twist by introducing a really tragic event. And of course, there's the really heavy Black Lives Matter themes throughout as well, which gives it its own sense of identity. I had some issues throughout the whole film in general, but generally I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I got on board early for this one, and I was pretty engaged the whole way. I wanted to see what was going to come next. And even though that there were some decisions, I guess, that some of the characters made in the travels that didn't really make sense. In the end, it didn't really matter for me because that's not what this film was about. Like, yes, it's about travel and time and things like that, but like you mentioned as well, that this film's about so much more, and this one gave me some like actual feel. So I'm on board with this.
Good.
All right. What are some characters that you'd like to discuss?
I want to talk about CJ. CJ is I guess we've got 2 main characters, but she's kind of the main driver. I think this character really worked, albeit she annoyed me with her stubbornness and her ego a little bit. But it's those traits that probably make her able to achieve what she has. And I think it constantly makes you remember that she's a teenager. And that drive and that passion, combined with that ability to not let anyone tell you what you can and can't do, that ability to think that you can solve all the world's problems by yourself really works with her. And when it doesn't work for her, all of us remember what it was like to have those ideals as a teenager and sit back and nod and go, well, CJ, we saw this coming, but you believe her going through that process in the first place. And I know you said that there's a few decisions that they made that really annoyed you. That happened a lot with me with CJ. When she would do something, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is the wrong decision. But I think in general, the character does work.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you because those brash, quick decisions that she makes because of her youth, I guess. And like you mentioned, you can think of yourself being like, something's annoyed me and I just need to do it straight away without actually, thinking about the pros or thinking about the cons. And even though they try to put her out as this kid that can't control her temper and is super stubborn, they didn't overplay that too much. So you did feel those attributes more through her actions rather than seeing her push it too much on screen. So I think, like you sort of mentioned, that her character did sort of work because you've got more of that idea and that they only sort of push on it at the start too, where, you've got, she's really hardworking, and this science expo with this time travel wasn't intended for the purpose they actually use it for. It was because they wanted to better themselves. It's because her and her, obviously Seb, we'll talk about in a second, like this almost brother-like character. They want this scholarship. They want to, and they've each got their own issues in life. But the whole idea or premise of this film, yes, it's helped adapt and them grow as characters, but in reality, the idea of it was for them to grow too. So I didn't mind that.
I think that making them teenagers works because on the one hand, you're like, no one's ever created time travel, and you're going to tell me the two 16-year-olds have made it. But then I guess it does go with that brash youthfulness that, to quote Jurassic Park, and not directly quote it because I can't remember the exact quote, like you were so hell-bent on figuring out whether you could do it, you didn't think about whether you should do it. And it's one of those things that they're doing these things that are so morally objectable, and they never thought about that. They just go, hey, we're back in time. Let's just do this. Let's just do that. Let's just do this. And it's like, hang on, if this was in the right hands, then this probably doesn't happen. But maybe if it's in the right hands, someone pulls it up before you even do that in the first place, which is why it kind of works as well.
I feel like you're talking about Big Hero 6 as well. Like it's just that I don't know if you've seen that, but it's yeah.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
I have a funny story about Big Hero 6. I'm gonna tell it really quickly.
Good.
Was it a meeting years and years ago when I was working in film advertising, and we were talking about, I can't remember what film was coming out, but there was a comparative title, Big Hero 6. We had our strategist writing on the board like comparative titles, and someone said Big Hero 6, and he didn't hear it properly. He didn't know the film, and he literally wrote Big Hairy Sex. So
I hope that you hadn't seen the film before you're pitching these ideas.
No. He was talking. This was a different film, and it's like it's comparative to Big Hero 6. It's like, oh yeah, Big Hero 6. Everyone in the room's, oh yeah, Big Hero 6, yeah, great one. And he's just standing there like, all right, Big Hero 6. But I have seen Big Hero 6. It's a great movie. I should rewatch it.
Yeah, good. All right, let's move into Seb or Sebastian. Go for it.
Sebastian. So he's the yin to CJ's yang. I loved this dude. His quiet, thoughtful, and considered approach really complemented CJ's gung-ho attitude, and similarly, it makes the two of them work so well together. But despite him being one of the main characters, he also kind of fills this role of the innocent bystander perfectly, because the audience cares enough about him to emotionally connect, but it also reflects that whole innocent bystander effect of the Black Lives Matter notion, and highlights the fact that the wrong people are so often the victims here. And if you're watching this movie, you can't think of a person who's more worthy of not getting the fate that Sebastian got. And that's the story that they want to tell, right? Because these people that are impacted by police brutality are often the last person in the world that should be receiving that. So I think they got that message across really well with Sebastian's character as well.
Yeah, I liked we sort of touched on this with CJ as well, but I like that idea of him being the brother that she almost wanted, I guess, the one that would work with her and do things with her. And I liked those intertwining stories where, you get that, you do get that connection with CJ and her actual brother in the absence of Seb. I'm trying to word this without giving the plot, like saying too much about the plot, but I think that his background as well, like with having his grandparents as his carers, and they're not pushing it in your face, but they're making you think about the questions: why, where are his parents, what's happened to his parents, why are his grandparents stepping in, and they're obviously putting in good routines and good, life skills for him and pushing him to achieve what he wants. And if he doesn't, then get a job, do some work. So I really, really did think that the subtlety with his character in highlighting that not only his life, but CJ's probably haven't been the easiest, but we still see these really strong characters in what we see. So I appreciated that through him too.
I love that. That's great.
Anyone else that you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Calvin, played by Astro. So if my thoughts on Sebastian were that he was the innocent bystander, those thoughts probably reflect Calvin more so, because he's the hothead who isn't doing anything wrong except being a little bit provocative, and that's what's causing this stereotyping, right? We know more about Calvin than what the cops do. We know that he's this man of the household, looks after his little sister, protects her, but he's still got dreams to make something of himself. But he, similarly to CJ, he's not going to get told what to do. And when the police are the ones asking the question, he's just about fed up with being pushed around. And as a viewer, you're kind of screaming at the TV, just telling him to relax and just do what he's told. Of course, but why is there a gun in his face in the first place? And why should he live his life walking on eggshells because he's an automatic suspect due to the color of his skin? His stubbornness, in a sense, does cost him his life, but he shouldn't have really been put in that position in the first place because he didn't deserve to be in that position. And that works. That's a story that someone like me doesn't necessarily understand from afar. But watching the film, those inadequacies really stand out, and you're like, shit, this is what's happening.
And I couldn't agree with you more, because I think that the lack of detail, I think we found out that he washed dishes at like a takeaway store. We knew that he looked out for his sister. We knew that the dad wasn't around. And there was a line about, mum needs to keep an eye out on you. But apart from that, and possibly the little bit of a blow up at the barbecue. But apart from that, it was nice that they didn't go into any further detail, because you don't need that detail. That's like the police officers, they don't ask for that detail. So us as an audience don't have the right to ask for that either. So you see, he obviously is the one that needs to be worried about too. So I agree with everything you said. And I think that even though he didn't get him a lot of screen time, I appreciated that character too.
The idea that he gets murdered minutes before he's talking to his mate about a girl that he's trying to hook up with at a party they want to go to tonight. That's the conversation that he's having, which is just the most normal conversation that anyone would be having. For someone to think that 2 minutes later he's going to get shot dead is just insane. And that's the message they're trying to get across.
And it's also that idea too that we've seen constantly in the media over the last few years of that reach for that phone, so you can provide evidence of your innocence. And that was just really impactful too.
Yeah, very good point.
Anyone else?
Let me just have a quick line on Eduardo, because I just don't know why they needed him to be such a knob. And then my second point on him is, how smart are the kids at this school? Like, they lose one guy who helped make the time travel, so they just brought another guy who sort of helped make the time travel thing. Like, these kids are smart.
If you've got Michael J. Fox as your science teacher, you're obviously in the high achiever class.
True. Marty McFly. Yeah. Although Marty McFly didn't create the time machine.
True. I thought this character was super lame to start with. The whole obsession with CJ and, I'll help you. Oh, you'll go on a date with me. I've wanted this since fourth grade. Those sorts of lines just didn't really sit really well. But I sort of did warm to him a little bit more towards the end when he got involved and started helping them, and his eyes sort of opening to seeing the work that these guys had actually been doing.
Yep, sure. It didn't have to be such a knob the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. Director, Stefon Bristol. Anything you wanted to mention about him, Stefan?
Probably nothing that I haven't already.
Yep. Yeah, just obviously first feature, and based on that short film. So let's talk about some scenes. What are some things that you enjoyed in this one?
Yeah, well, I have to say that the Michael J. Fox cameo was brilliant. I haven't actually looked. Is he in the cast on IMDb?
I didn't look either, but I had that down as well, because the smile on my face just to see him on screen, I was like, I was not expecting that. And I don't know if you're the same.
Oh, massively. I loved it. Just the fact that he was there. I think also the fact that it makes this film really aware of where it stands in the world of making time travel movies. And it gives it an opportunity to sort of pay homage and bow down to the heroes of time travel movies, which is Back to the Future.
Yeah.
What a nice touch. And obviously the fact that he said Great Scott, which I did read was not part of the script.
Oh, really?
So he went off with it, and they obviously yelled cut, and the entire set just burst out laughing and just thought it was the greatest thing ever.
And it gave that double whammy too, because this film, the opening scene tells you it's about time travel. Then you see Michael J. Fox like, smile on my face. This is a great cameo, and then to finish it off with that line as well, like it was just a great start.
It was big. There was a lot happening in that scene, even though there wasn't a lot happening. I think they handled really early on when the cops on the street corner came and tried to sort of settle them down a little bit. I think they handled that situation really well because they had Sebastian warning them that the cops were coming. And to me, that felt weird because they're just standing there and not doing anything, having like a minor argument between brother and sister. And I was like, okay, why are you warning them that the cops are coming? But then obviously his mate pulls a phone out. And that just, again, I'm so detached from what that would feel like. But this is exactly how it feels for people who are subject to that kind of wrongdoing, is that they need to be on their toes when they even see a police car. And they captured that really well for me, for someone who isn't in that situation, to go, oh, this is actually how it is. Why does this feel weird to me? Oh, well, for them, it's normal. So I think they did that really well.
Yeah, I've mentioned this on the podcast before too. The novel is better, but the film, The Hate You Give, similar age bracket, same sort of things, same themes. If you enjoyed those types of scenes, you've got to go jump out and see that.
Yeah, just the way it makes you think about your own situation and how lucky you are, but also how wrong it is that people do feel this way. I think in terms of scenes, the film took a real turn when Calvin died. It went from, as we sort of spoke about, a fun time travel movie to this movie is saying a lot more than I was expecting it to say. And that was great. It gave it a different identity, which was cool. And I think almost the most memorable scene for me was when, the second or third time they'd gone back and Sebastian obviously found the second Sebastian found CJ, but then he saw him coming out of the bodega and he just started spluttering blood and disappeared. That was really impactful for me because that was our guy. That was Sebastian. Like, what are we doing here? We can't let this happen.
You're going to steal all the things I've got as well, because that, like, just
great
when he started disappearing, like I started feeling emotional. Like it was so well done, just to be able to have those feelings based on, not an awful lot of time with the characters up to this stage too. So yeah, good call.
Really good point. And then sort of this scene only works because that scene works is Calvin disappearing at the end as well. It was almost like a slow, more poetic, like, sorry, it was me or him. And in his head, I don't know what happens when you're disappearing. But is he just like, okay, CJ's failed or CJ's done the right thing? I don't know. And it was, again, just that zoom out, the whole alleyway with him just slowly disappearing. Again, really impactful. That was some really great shots.
Yeah, I've got a couple of others I'll add.
Great.
And just going right back to the start too, just me being a bit of a Star Trek fan, just to set the film up with time travel, and then there was a line like "energize" and language warning. There's like, this isn't Star Trek, shut the F up, sort of thing. I had a good giggle to start with. I was like, okay, I know what we're in for straight away, so that was good.
Opening scene was fun. It was a really good way to start a movie.
And a cheap way to do it too. Like when you're doing a time travel movie, that's a good cheap way to do it. The first time that they time travel and they realize that they've done it, and then Seb sort of like checks that his manhood's still in place. I thought that was funny. The other one that sort of got me was when they actually used the title from the film, the See You Yesterday, when CJ and her brother are in that alley and they're talking about, he doesn't want anything to happen to her. And I actually got chills, and it doesn't happen very often to me in films. Like I was like very, very into this, obviously, because I had shivers. I was like, wow, this is getting me. And then finally, the last one that did the same sort of thing is, when Calvin was seeing that funeral pamphlet sort of transition to Seb and that almost like sacrificial action, that got me too. Like this film got me a lot. For a sci-fi film, this got a lot of emotions going.
Oh, it was so much more than a sci-fi film, wasn't it? It was almost time travel was took the back seat really to what the story was really trying to say.
Exactly. Was there anything in here that you didn't like?
Look, it did annoy me that CJ was so outrageously reckless, and I know I can sometimes allow you to progress a plot in a certain way by doing a certain thing, and we spoke about the fact that she's a teenage girl and she's going to make these decisions, but sometimes it was just too much for me. I was almost unforgivable, some of the decisions that she was making, and that takes away from a story when you're just doing it there because it needs to do it. So that did bother me a little bit.
Yep.
And similarly to that, it bothered me when it took her so long to click that she could go back and fix it when Calvin first died. Like it took her Sebastian's grandma said something and she's just like, hang on, I can go back in time. It's like, surely that's the first thing you think of.
Fair call.
That was a bit weird. Basically everything Eduardo did was a bad scene. just because he was just overdoing it, overshooting it. And I'm gonna jump out on a limb here, and I love an ambiguous ending, and I've loved ambiguous endings probably the older I've got for some reason, maybe just the way I watch films and the way I think about films, and I enjoy that it leaves it up to me. But this one actually felt a little bit off. I think initially I felt like they didn't want to end it either way, and I get that because what you're trying to say throughout is really important, and giving it a happy ending is almost an unjust way to go. All these people have been killed for the wrong reasons, but this is a good ending story. It's almost like a slap in the face to them. So I understand that, but the message of meddling with time, which again is not the biggest theme of the film, but it is still important. It never really gets answered. So, I mean, the happy ending is you go back to the first time and make sure that CJ doesn't throw the slushy, because that's what starts this chain reaction. Yep. With old mate breaking his arm and then everything going on from there. But I don't know. In a sense, I get why he left it ambiguous, because he wanted to make sure he wasn't doing the wrong thing by tying it in a nice bow, as you said. But he also didn't want it to be overly bleak. I think this leaves, I don't know. It doesn't. Yeah, it just bothered me when it happened. I don't know how it ended either. I'm sorry, I don't have the answers. I think it's difficult. Yeah. But it bothered me when it finished like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that in my takeaways, I think.
Maybe you can talk about it better than I did.
I don't think I can, because I agree. I think that there's too many options on the table as to what can happen. But I'll get to that a bit later on. I think probably a better time to talk about it. The only thing, the thing for me that really the sciencey stuff, I don't mind a sci-fi film where they explain the science and sort of make it a bit more understandable for someone who's got no bloody idea. But for me, in this, the science, especially, there were quite a few scenes where they're doing the sciencey stuff. It was just too much, all over my head, and I was like, I just wanted those bits to finish.
This is actually my question for you that I had at the end. I'll bring it forward now, because I was in these types of movies. How much do you try and understand the science? Does it lose you, or do you just, like I probably do, I just put it to one side and I just wait for the plot to continue, because I know I'm not going to understand the science side of it. I'm assuming that it kind of checks out in some way. I'm like, that's fine, great, go ahead and do your thing. And it doesn't bother me. But do you try and figure it out?
No, I'm shocking at maths and science. So the ones that do it well, like if you stick with doing that the whole way through the film or the TV show or whatever it is, then it's okay, because you're not focusing on that. You're focusing on the characters, their movements. You're focusing on their relationships and how they're doing it, even if the dialogue's jargon to you. Whereas this one, it was like there were just these patches in between that had these sciencey sort of things that didn't really tie in with the rest of their communications or interactions with others. I don't know if that makes sense.
As you're saying, yeah. I guess maybe, because I just put it to one side when I don't understand it. Like Tenet, for example, I enjoyed Tenet so much more when I stopped trying to figure it out, and I could just enjoy the story, and I understood enough of it. But how they can do it? Nah, but I'll just trust that you're right.
Exactly. And when we saw that, like, I really enjoyed that film, because the sciencey things, like, it wasn't like such a big emphasis on it. It was like, here's a scene, but when they were explaining the sciencey things, we're having visuals that were like showing us those backwards bullets or whatever, they were walking it through it. So I just think that you need that to dumb it down for people like myself, I guess.
Good point. This was dry, wasn't it? They were just sitting there talking about what they need to put in and where. Yeah.
And like they tried it, they had like a screen where they had the VR sets on, so we couldn't even see what they were seeing. They were just talking it through. So
that's true.
Yeah. Anyway, good question. All right, time to talk about some themes and some ideas in this one, and I think there is a lot.
Look, there's an enormous. I don't know any other way to talk about it as like the Black Lives Matter theme. It's obviously a very universal pledge that's been happening for a very long time. Obviously, more prominent in America, but probably louder in America at the moment. I'm sure it's happening everywhere. It would be ignorant of me to suggest otherwise. And that's, I mean, we've spoken about it a lot already, and I don't know much more to say about it. I think this film does a really good job of bringing it to light and putting people who aren't in that situation in their shoes for a little bit to see what it actually feels like, from the comfort of your own couch, obviously. But it does. I love a movie that makes you think, and this one certainly did when they were discussing this theme. Before I go into anything else, is there anything you want to say about it?
Yeah, I think that just tying in, I guess, with what you've mentioned there, that cycle of violence that is prevalent in the Black Lives Matter movement, where that cycle can't be broken no matter how many ways it plays out, especially in this film too. Like that, we see the same violence is always one of the solutions or the endings to one of their cycles. And the best way for me to describe that is CJ reports that robbery, and 5 minutes later the cops still aren't there. Like, this is that kind of response that the Black communities receive. So that, I mean, this is that commentary that you've mentioned on not just the present society in the USA, but the past as well, the gun violence, the killings by police officers. And I think that they did a good job of highlighting that.
And you mentioned something I was going to mention as well, the idea that there's some things that, and this is a bleak outlook, but there's some things that you just can't change. And if you meddle, in this case, going back in time, you actually only make them worse. I think you could argue that it got worse almost every time they went back. And that obviously applies to the general notion of time travel potentially. When everyone talks about time travel, like, don't change anything. But this notion applies to the Black Lives Matter movement, like you spoke about, and I think that's really strong.
100%. It's not necessarily about changing the past, but moving forward, and especially through the character of CJ. I guess she's so focused on the past that she's ignoring the future. She's ignoring what can happen if they just leave where they're at and move forward and reflect on or highlight the lives of these people that have gone before them. So yeah, I agree.
And obviously the other theme that comes out of this film is the idea of family, and what they say, friends of the family you choose, or something to that effect. There's a really strong community feel to this film, and I think probably really reflective of Crown Heights sort of suburbia area of Brooklyn, that comes across really nicely.
Yeah, I think so too, and they tie in through that family and the shots that you do see with the big majority of the community together. That there's a lot of grief, and I know there's probably some critique about how CJ discovered or thought about needing to go back, but sometimes that grief can block out ideas of needing to move forward. So yeah, I think that idea of grief and being with those that are close to you does stand out in this too. And as well, that idea of some strong Black teens on the screen. With brains that don't use brawn to get what they need. Like, it's such a good thing that they want this education, and there's that commentary too that science is bigger than these kids too, that these kids are strong and willing to move forward and do what they need to do, but they've got to take in so much more than the average person has to.
Yeah, no, that's well said as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, what did you take away from this one?
Well, this is the section where I couldn't figure out where to put anything but the fact that I really liked the reggae Caribbean feel to the soundtrack. It's it's a sneaky. I do like that reggae urban kind of. You wouldn't expect it, someone like me, but I do like that kind of music. I don't listen to it a lot, but when I hear a song, my wife always says like, "Oh, you like this song? There's a bit of like reggae to it." I'm like, "Okay, I'm listening." So that was really good, really welcome for me. It sounded nice. Cool. But in general, this is one of those movies that I never would have watched, and I like that it's found a home on Netflix, because this movie is probably not going to do very well if it's not on a streaming service. Let's be frank, especially at this day and age. So it's the right kind of movie for Netflix to be buying, and as a viewer, it's the kind of movie that I do want to stumble across.
Just to follow on from what you said, the idea of, I think I was reading somewhere about how would you market this outside a streaming service? Because yes, it's a film about teens, but you've got violence, you've got some pretty heavy swearing at stages. So, realistically, to try and whack a rating on this and put it in a cinema would be very hard, because you're probably going to exclude the market that you want to see it. Yeah, I agree. Netflix is probably the perfect place for this to sit.
Yeah, 100%.
This is where I sort of said before, I'll come back to this, but this is all about the ending a bit, I think, because once the film finished, I had to sit there for a bit and just think about it and reflect a little bit, because I wasn't sold. I wasn't sold on that ending. And I don't know that I wanted CJ to go back by herself again to try and fix it. And I guess that's the question you've got to ask yourself. Like, would it have been a more effective finish if she didn't go back? Because they could have finished it without her going back, and that would have been fine. And I was sitting there feeling like really torn. And then I was like, okay, why would they specifically have done this? And then I was like, okay, you've got this idea of hope that she can do it. We know that she's stubborn. We know that she's worked so hard to get this experiment to happen, or to get the time travel to happen, that they've just kept doing it and doing it until they've got it right. So realistically, knowing her character, we know that she's probably going to keep doing it and doing it until she gets it right. Whether it takes her 100 goes or whether it takes her 1,000 goes. But at the same time, her stubbornness didn't get her anywhere in this film. Like, every time she was stubborn, nothing that she needed to happen happened. So that's where I sat on it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
But I felt a lot happier after thinking about it, thinking, okay, I don't mind that ending, knowing that there are some other options other than her just doing it for the sake of doing it.
It provides a glimmer of hope without telling you that everything's fine. And I think that would almost be like, obviously her saving Calvin, when the more I think about it, doesn't sit well with me, because I don't think it's reflective of what the film's trying to say. And as a viewer, obviously you want her to, because you want everyone to be happy, but there's also a level of her not going back, which I'm the same as you. Watching it, I'm just like, just count your losses. You got Sebastian back. Maybe this whole process has made you appreciate what you do have, and how fickle that can be, and how important those people are. And her not going back, maybe I probably would have been okay with me. But you're right, because I was flat with the ending. The more I think about it, the more I didn't know how I wanted to end it though. So maybe that glimmer of hope without actually telling you that it's going to work or it's not going to work. Because in my head, it doesn't work. She's tried everything she's had, and she's actually making it worse every time she goes back.
So is there a chance that she goes back and sacrifices herself so the other two can live?
I don't think that's a good ending. I don't think that's just ending.
I don't know. I'm just like, there's so many with time travel. I guess there's just so many different options. Like, what does she like? What is she going back for? Because we can see through all these different stages that no matter which one she goes through, something bad's going to happen. So she's got to be going back in time, knowing that something bad's going to happen. Whether it's a broken arm, whether it's someone dying, like two people dying. So her going back, she knows that something bad's going to have to happen.
Go back and stop yourself from throwing that slushy.
I like that resolution. I do. I think that's really good.
But at the end of the day, you got me thinking of this when you talked about her calling the cops and them not coming. They obviously came when the place was actually robbed. So in the real story, the place gets robbed, call the cops, and they come. The guys are still running away, so they've come almost immediately. When she calls the cops, they don't come that time. But 10 minutes later, I don't know. That doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't sit as well with me, because they did come. It's not like you can't say, yeah, the cops won't even come, because the whole reason that he's dead is because they did come.
Yeah, but they didn't come to the shop, so maybe they got the call and then just went straight looking for people rather than going to the shop. True.
Well, what did she say in the call, though? She wouldn't have said that the place is going to get robbed. I think she rang and said it got robbed.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, good question.
We're digging a bit.
Yeah, too far. I don't think it was meant to be looked at that hard. Did you go into IMDb at all?
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Me either. So, question time. Have you got any others left?
That was my only one. That was my big one about the science in time travel movies. So we've talked about that.
I've only got one too, and I think we've discussed that we think CJ's smart. Does she have any common sense?
She's got a hell of a lot to learn.
Yeah.
That's the thing about it is it's consistent. It's not like there's times where she makes really clever decisions And I'm not talking about academic decisions. She's basically reckless and stubborn this entire film, and that's okay because that's obviously her personality. And then her brother knows that scene of when they're over the sink in the kitchen, he knows how reckless and stubborn she is, and so I appreciate the fact that's consistent. So to your question, I don't think she does have a heap of common sense.
No, I don't think so either. So good. Well, I think we're ready to wrap it up and give it a rating out of 5 and come up with an average. So fill us in on your final thoughts.
Yeah, look, I was pretty flat with the ending. Maybe I'm coming to terms with it. I don't know. It's a really hard one, but I can't shake that feeling. But either way, I did enjoy it. Initially, it was a journey. It was fun. It was a little bit different. It was vibrant, but it also took on this second persona when it had some really big issues to tackle, and it opened up a side of my brain that I wasn't expecting it to open up. So despite the fact that it did have its flaws, and I talked through them, I really did like it. It's 3 stars. I'd love it to be 3.5, but it's not quite there. So it's a nice juicy 3.
Excellent. I probably haven't pumped this up as much as I did like it, to be honest, because this movie, like there were multiple times where I had feelings of my body reacting, which doesn't happen very often. And that underlining commentary in the background about what life is like to be in fear of the police, knowing what they're doing or what the police are doing is wrong, and what these kids and society and these members in this society, that they're not doing anything wrong. And I don't know. I'm very, very mixed with it, like with my feelings, that because this film, like, it got me. And I know that there's flaws, and we've spoken about the flaws, but I like that idea of these kids trying to better themselves and work out what the best way moving forward is. And even if CJ doesn't realize that yet, I think that hopefully Seb, in one of her, when she comes back, then she's going to understand and acknowledge that. And I just really like this film. I'm giving it a 4.5.
4.5? Oh no!
Yep,
that's awesome. No, well done. When you started talking, I was like, so this whole time I'm like, Jesse's going to give it a 3.5, and I think that's great. And then you started saying, I didn't pump this up enough. I'm like, it's a 4. He's going to give it a 4.
No, I'm giving it a 4.5.
This is
no, that was
4.5. I like that.
After watching that, I was
now
like,
I look like I hate it.
No, I like at the end of that the film, I was like, I would almost contemplate teaching this. That's how big and that's how much I was like, this would be an excellent film to teach. And I don't know, I just really connected with it. So,
but outside of that, you also had seemed to have this full visceral reaction to everything. Like it was, and that's rare in a film, but that's what you want to get out of a good film. You want to really feel things when you're watching a film, and that's what the good films do. So you got that.
Yeah, I know it's high, but
it's great.
There's those 3 specific scenes that literally I was like, wow, that got me. So doesn't happen very often. So I'm giving it a 4.5. I
want you, Jesse, and this might be for you or me, it might not even be for the listeners or anything. I want you to start thinking about your top one. We've already done our 150. I want to see your rankings of your 155 Netflix film or Flix Forum films that you've done. Start thinking about putting that list together for the next few, and I'd love to see where this one ends up.
It'll be it's up there with like Oksha, just off the top of my head. So
Roma,
Roma's higher than this, but yeah, loved Roma. Anyway, we need to move on. So we obviously have our socials. We have Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I just want to put on there for this week. What did you think CJ did in that last run? What was her intention? And I know there's no answer. We've already discussed it quite a bit, but what was she?
She was being a dead horse. She was going back and trying to do the same thing again. Calvin wasn't going to be convinced.
She was by herself this time, so yeah, it's she's only got a minimal amount of options, I guess, because she doesn't have that help. Very interesting. But we will be back for another film next week. And next week we're switching up completely. It's sort of going back a bit. It's a 2018 film. It's a psychological horror thriller. It's called, and I'm sure you'll probably remember when this one came out. It's called The Perfection, directed by Richard Shepard, and it stars Alison Williams, Logan Browning, Stephen Weber, and Elania Huffman. I very, very clearly remember when this came out because they pumped it up as Alison Williams from Get Out. And I have visions in my mind of when it came out.
I actually don't, but maybe if I see the poster or something, I will.
I reckon if you see the poster, it'll stand out.
This might be up my alley. Not that the other ones haven't been, but this could be good.
It could be. We'll have to wait and see though. So that's what we've got next week. This has been a good one. So I appreciate, and you gave me more insight than I had as well. So I think your thoughts on this were excellent.
That's why we do this. We both feed on each other. And as I said, there's nothing better than watching a film and then really, really figuring out what you think about it.
Yep. And I'll see you next week.
You will.